Somewhere, right now, there's a version of you, living the exact life you keep saying you want, and the only thing standing between you and that person is a stack of small decisions you haven't made yet. The life you're living right now is a receipt, a printed record of every choice you've made up to this exact second. Look at it closely enough and you'll see it doesn't lie. It doesn't care about your excuses, your intentions, or the version of you that meant to. It only shows what you actually did. Every decision you make today is either paying into your future or borrowing against it. There is no neutral setting. You are either building the person you keep saying you want to become, or you are quietly dismantling her, one small compromise at a time. And here's the part that should scare you a little. Nobody collapses in a single day. Nobody wakes up broke, out of shape, or 30 years behind on their dream because of one bad decision. It happens in inches. A missed workout here, a snoozed alarm there, a promise you made to yourself in January that you quietly buried by February. None of those moments feel like betrayal in the moment, but stack enough of them together, and that's exactly what they become. So ask yourself honestly, not performatively, are you moving forward, or are you just moving? Are you making progress, or are you rearranging the furniture of your life and calling it change? Because those two things look almost identical from the outside, and only you know which one you're actually doing. Here's a truth that nobody wants printed on a motivational poster because it doesn't sell inspiration, it sells discomfort. There are no shortcuts. There are no hacks, no life-changing morning routines, no 5-minute trick that replaces years of unglamorous repetition. If you go looking for the easy road, I promise you, it is longer than the hard one. It just doesn't look that way from the entrance. The easy road feels good for the first mile and then loops you right back to where you started, except now you've lost time you can't get back. The hard road feels brutal for the first mile, and then, somewhere past the point most people quit, it starts opening up into something real. If you tell yourself you're going to do something, do yourself the biggest favor of your life and don't lie about it. Not to your coach, not to your parents, not to the person you're trying to impress on social media, because none of those people are the one who has to live inside your body and your bank account and your unfinished goals for the next 50 years. When you look in the mirror, you're not just looking at today's version of you. You're looking at a message being sent to the you that exists 10 years from now. Every excuse you let slide today is a letter you're mailing to a future version of yourself who has to deal with the consequences of your comfort. Nobody can live that future for you. Nobody can retroactively give you the body, the bank account, the relationship, or the peace of mind you avoided building today. You make your bed, and you're the one who has to lie in it every single night, whether it's made of accomplishment or of regret. Weak people find comfort in blame. They blame their parents for the childhood they didn't choose. They blame their boss for the ceiling they never tried to break through. They blame the economy, the algorithm, the system, the timing, anything with a name other than their own. And here's the cruel irony. Blame feels like relief in the moment, but it's actually a life sentence because if the problem is always someone else, you never get the authority to fix it. You are the leader of your own life, whether you accept the position or not. The only choice you actually have is whether you lead well or lead poorly. Choose the harder path on purpose, the path built on responsibility, effort, and sacrifice, the one paved with discipline and humility instead of shortcuts and excuses, because that uncomfortable path is the only one that has ever led anywhere worth arriving at. Freedom isn't the absence of structure. Freedom is what structure eventually buys you. Make discipline a piece of furniture in your daily life, not a seasonal decoration you bring out every January and put away by February. Anything worth achieving demands total effort. Not effort on the days you feel inspired, but effort on the ordinary, forgettable Tuesday when nothing is pushing you and no one is watching. Every hour counts. Every night counts. What you do when your friends are out having a good time and you're choosing something harder, that counts double. What you do on a random Saturday afternoon when nobody would notice either way, that's the real test. The clock that tracks your success doesn't check the calendar. It doesn't pause for weekends, holidays, or bad moods. It runs whether you show up or not. Somewhere along the way, people convinced themselves that they could work a handful of hours a day and coast through the rest, and still end up somewhere extraordinary. That math has never worked, not once for anyone. You cannot build an uncommon life on a common amount of effort. You have to be willing to give an amount of energy and focus and thought to your goal that feels, frankly, a little excessive to everyone watching from the sidelines. because nothing great has ever been built from a position of comfort. Everything worth having was built by someone willing to be uncomfortable long after it stopped being fun. Get used to the discomfort. Not tolerant of it, used to it. The way you get used to cold water after the first 30 seconds. Once discomfort stops being a stop sign and starts being background noise, your limits basically disappear, because most limits were never real in the first place. They were just the point where discomfort used to win the argument. Here's a question worth sitting with for longer than it takes to read it. If, for the next 10 years, you stopped avoiding the thing you already know you need to do, who would you become? Not a slightly improved version, an almost unrecognizable one. Most people are operating at a fraction of what they're actually capable of and mistaking that fraction for their ceiling. Efficient people, the ones who actually reach the goals everyone else is still talking about, aren't operating on a different level of talent. They're operating on a different level of follow-through, and the gap between talented but scattered and average but relentless is bigger than most people ever imagine. So confront yourself. Not gently, not with the kind of self-talk you'd use to comfort a stranger having a bad day. Look in the mirror and tell the person staring back that the excuses stop today. Not tomorrow, not after this next binge watch, not after one more scroll through the feed. You get furious when someone shows up late and disrespects your time. You get furious when someone borrows money and doesn't pay you back. You get furious when a stranger behind a counter gets your order wrong, but somehow you let yourself, the person who owes you the most, off the hook constantly. You're not where you should be financially, and you gave yourself a pass. You know you're capable of more, and you keep negotiating yourself down to less. It is time to stop being generous with your own excuses. Tell yourself no more snacks tonight. No more numbing out in front of the TV instead of finishing what you started. No more I'll handle it tomorrow when tomorrow is just today wearing a disguise. You have to hold yourself accountable the way you'd hold someone you actually respected. Because if you can't respect your own word, nobody else's respect will ever be enough to fill that gap. This year, challenge yourself to do something you've genuinely never done before, to build something you've never had before. Because repeating last year's effort and expecting a different result isn't hope. It's just denial with better branding. Discipline is a muscle, and so is emotional control. And muscles only grow under resistance you didn't feel like applying. Stop negotiating with your own mind like it's a business partner you need to convince. There's no, maybe I'll start tomorrow. There's no, let me wait until I feel ready. Feelings are unreliable weather. Some days sunny, some days a storm, and you cannot build a life around checking the forecast before you decide to show up. Decide once. Stop reopening the vote every single morning. Train the mind, or it will quietly train you, using your goals, your health, and your discipline as its own personal negotiating chips until you've settled for a life you never actually chose. You have no real business settling for average, yet somehow you've become excellent at justifying it. You've built entire arguments for why 5 a.m. isn't realistic. You don't need more resources. You don't need more time. What's missing is usually smaller and more embarrassing than that. It's called execution, and it's the cheapest, most available resource on earth and somehow the one people avoid the most. If you executed just a little more consistently, you would be operating on an entirely different level within months, not years. You are not as far from your goals as your excuses have convinced you. You are one uncomfortable habit away from a completely different trajectory. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Work 1 hour longer than feels convenient. Stop hitting snooze like it's a personality trait instead of a decision you're making against yourself. One sacrifice applied consistently, and your entire life reroutes. It is simple to know what you want. It is not easy to become the person who gets it. Simple and easy are not the same thing, and confusing them is exactly how people spend a decade wanting something they were never willing to actually build. Your job is to do the parts you don't feel like doing, on the days you don't feel like doing them because feeling like it was never a prerequisite anyone promised you. And you are so busy waiting for motivation to knock on your door that you've missed the fact that nobody is coming. No one is coming to turn off your television for you. No one is coming to physically walk you out the door for a run. Nobody is coming to submit that application for the job you've dreamed about since you were a teenager. Nobody is coming to write your business plan while you sleep on the couch telling yourself you'll get to it eventually. It is entirely, uncomfortably, permanently up to you. And because most people will only ever do what feels good in the immediate moment, unless you understand this one idea, you will never build the life you actually want. You have to parent yourself. You have to be the version of you that pushes, that sets the bedtime, that says no to the extra hour of scrolling, because the version of you that only wants comfort will never volunteer for growth on its own. Watch your choices closely. People don't wake up one day having made one catastrophic decision. They make a small bad choice, wake up, make another one, and before long they've built an entire habit out of choices that were never actually taking them anywhere, and then they wonder how they ended up somewhere they never intended to be. A lot of people think their biggest obstacle is intelligence or opportunity, when really their biggest obstacle is stamina. You can't out-strategize everything. Some things in life don't require a smarter plan. They require more energy, more repetition, more hours logged than feels reasonable. If it takes you 3 weeks to do what someone else finishes in a single focused day, that doesn't make you a bad person, but it does mean you'll stay average for exactly as long as you're comfortable being slow, because greatness has never once rewarded a leisurely pace. The people who actually win in life play offense, not defense. They stop reacting to circumstances and start creating them. Stand up a little straighter. Walk with a bit more purpose. Become the kind of person other people look at and quietly decide not to test. Not because you're aggressive, but because you clearly know exactly where you're headed. Get obsessed with your own progress. Get relentless about your own standards. Carry an attitude that assumes you're going to win. Not arrogantly, but calmly. The way someone carries themselves when they've already put in the work and simply know the outcome is coming. Say it out loud if you have to. I'm going to win. My life is going to win. Because the cost of losing quietly, repeatedly for years is a burden most people never fully calculate until they're already carrying it. Growth doesn't come from following the crowd. It comes from activating the part of you that thinks clearly and setting aside just for a moment the part of you that reacts emotionally to every inconvenience. That's not natural. It takes practice and then more practice and then practice after that, because practice doesn't make perfect. Perfection was never the goal. Practice makes improvement, which is actually better, because it means there's no finish line where you're allowed to stop getting sharper. You can always better your personal best. You are always bigger than whatever you've done so far, which means every single day is another shot at a new breakthrough, if you're willing to keep showing up for it. Repeat this to yourself until it stops feeling like a slogan and starts feeling like a fact. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I'm going to make it. The people who actually make it in this world look around for the circumstances they want, and when those circumstances don't exist, they build them from nothing. It's hard. Nobody said otherwise. But it's worth it, and worth it and easy have never once lived in the same sentence. You have to dig for it. You have to keep going long after the applause stops, long after the excitement of day one wears off, because you know somewhere underneath the exhaustion that it's possible, and you are the only variable standing between possible and done. Here's a question that separates the people who grow from the people who stay stuck. What's the common denominator of your failures? If your honest answer is the economy, the competition, your boss, or bad luck, you have absolutely no reason to change anything, because none of those things are yours to fix. But if you wake up tomorrow, look in the mirror and say, I'm failing because of the decisions I keep making and the energy I keep withholding, something shifts immediately because now the solution is yours too. Nobody enjoys thinking of themselves as the reason for their own setbacks, but that discomfort is exactly what creates change. Winners win and losers lose, and if you keep accepting a culture of losing in your own life, letting people treat you poorly, letting yourself quit early, letting excuses pass as explanations, that acceptance becomes your new normal, whether you meant it to or not. Take ownership of everything in your world, the parts that make you proud and the parts that make you wince. Don't outsource the blame for your shortfalls. And don't outsource the credit for your solutions either. Own both, because ownership is the only thing that gives you the authority to change your own story. Take ownership of your work, your relationships, your health, your future, your life, start to finish. No asterisks. Some people don't need an alarm clock, not because they wake up naturally early, but because their reason for getting up is loud enough to do the job. Passion works better than any alarm ever built. Determination gets you out of bed faster than caffeine. Ask yourself honestly what actually wakes you up, what actually drives you, because if the answer is nothing in particular, that's not a small problem. That's the entire problem. Whatever your dream is, it has to follow you into the morning and sit with you at night. It has to shape the media you consume, the people you spend time with, the way you spend the hours nobody's grading you on. Nobody builds something extraordinary from a place of laziness, endless scrolling, or convenient days off. At some point, a decision has to get made, and enough is enough. Average is officially retired, and it's time to move differently. Every transition from one level of life to the next only happens once you're genuinely tired of the level you're currently living on. You don't belong at the bottom just because you've gotten used to the view from there. Comfort at a level beneath your potential is still just comfort, and it will always feel safer than the climb, which is exactly why so many people never leave it. Get up, get moving. Live like the version of yourself you keep describing to other people, instead of quietly settling for the version that's easier to maintain. Some days you won't feel like showing up, and that's fine as long as you show up anyway, because feelings were never a reliable narrator for what you're actually capable of. Somebody else, somewhere, is counting on the version of you that follows through. A partner, a parent, a child, a future client, or simply the person you promised yourself you'd become. Your effort has to match your ambition, not your mood. You can't keep the same schedule, the same habits, the same casual relationship with your own goals, and expect an uncommon outcome. At some point, your grind has to be recalibrated to match the size of the dream you claim to be chasing. Or the dream quietly downgrades itself to match your effort instead. Use every one of your 24 hours like they're actually finite, because they are. Somewhere out there, someone is chasing the exact same goal you are, with a similar amount of hunger, similar sacrifices, similar sleepless nights. And the only real advantage available to you is speed and consistency. It's not always about being smarter or more resourced. Sometimes it's simply about getting up earlier than they do and finishing before they've started, so that by the time everyone else arrives with their advantages fully loaded, you've already crossed a line they haven't even seen yet. Somewhere along the way, you probably started measuring your progress against a highlight reel instead of your own baseline. You scroll past someone else's version of made it and quietly downgrade your own timeline, forgetting that you're comparing your rough draft to somebody else's final cut. Comparison isn't dangerous because it's untrue. It's dangerous because it's incomplete. You never see the years that came before the moment you're envious of. You only see the highlight, never the 1,000 ordinary mornings that built it. So stop measuring yourself against someone else's edited timeline and start measuring yourself against the version of you from 90 days ago. That's the only fair comparison available. And it's usually the only one that actually tells you the truth about whether you're moving or just spectating. Think about the last time you actually finished something hard. Not started, finished. Chances are, right before the finish line, there was a moment where quitting looked completely reasonable. Your legs were done. Your motivation had already left the building, and the only thing left was a decision that had nothing to do with how you felt. That's the moment that separates people, not the starting line where everybody looks equally motivated and equally inspired. The starting line is full of people. It's the middle, the unglamorous, unfilmed middle, where the crowd thins out, because that's where feelings stop being useful and identity has to take over instead. Compounding is patient, and it doesn't care whether you notice it working. A single disciplined choice looks insignificant in isolation. One workout, one skipped distraction, one difficult conversation you finally had instead of avoiding. But discipline was never designed to impress you on day one. It's designed to accumulate quietly until months later, you look back and can't quite explain how you became someone so different, except that you know exactly how, because you were there for every unremarkable Tuesday that built it. The people who give up early are usually standing closer to the breakthrough than they realize. They just can't see it yet, because compounding hides its results until it doesn't. Picture two animals sharing the same stretch of open field every single morning, a lion and a gazelle. The gazelle only moves with real urgency when something is actively chasing it. Remove the threat and the gazelle stops, content, until the next thing forces it back into motion. A lot of people live exactly like that gazelle. Productive only when someone's watching, motivated only when there's a coach, a deadline, a reward, or an audience keeping them accountable. The second that external pressure disappears, so does the effort. The lion is a different animal entirely. The lion isn't running because someone's clapping. The lion runs because eating isn't optional, and what it catches doesn't just feed itself. It feeds everyone depending on it back home. So the real question worth asking is, What's your internal reason? What's the thing that would keep you moving even if nobody ever noticed, rewarded, or applauded it? If that motivation lives inside you instead of depending on someone else supplying it, there is genuinely nothing you can't eventually have. A true hunter doesn't operate on a schedule. They don't hunt from 9 to 5 and clock out regardless of whether they've caught anything, because the thing they're chasing doesn't check anyone's calendar either. A true hunter keeps going until the goal is actually caught, and then, almost immediately, starts hunting the next one, because for them the value was never just in the catch. It was in the entire relentless process of the chase. Somebody working a conventional pace celebrates a single win and coasts on it for a while. Somebody operating at a higher level catches one goal and is already scanning the horizon for the next. Because settling into the glow of a single accomplishment is its own quiet form of stagnation. Maybe right now you're mostly gazelle with only a little bit of lion in you. That's fine. That sliver is enough to start with, as long as you're honest that it needs to grow. Talent was never actually the deciding factor. Willpower is. Intelligence might stay roughly the same over the years, but willpower compounds if you keep feeding it, getting stronger and more stubborn with every year you refuse to quit. Appetite should grow every single year. The appetite to execute, to help more people, to be bolder, to raise the bar you set for yourself the year before. The moment you get comfortable is the moment you stop actually moving, even if you're still technically busy. Thinking about a plan forever isn't the same as building one. Endless preparation without action doesn't keep you in place. It actually moves you backward, because the world keeps advancing while you keep planning, and standing still next to something that's moving forward is, functionally, falling behind. So take action, even small action today, and repeat that small action daily, because momentum is built in inches, not in dramatic leaps that happen once a year. Be what you say you are. If you claim you're serious about changing your life, about your health, about the weight you want to lose or the business you want to build, then be about it today, not on the symbolic first day of some future month. This isn't a season for more dreaming out loud. This is a season for the unglamorous, unfilmed grind that dreaming was always supposed to lead to. Stop watching other people cash in on the exact vision you've been quietly carrying around for years while you wait for a more convenient time to start. Here's the part most people skip entirely. They carry a massive goal around in their head with absolutely no steps attached to it. Ask them what it will actually take day by day, and they can't answer, because somewhere the goal became a feeling instead of a plan. We all want things in life, but wanting isn't what determines outcomes. Tolerance is. You get exactly what you're willing to tolerate, in yourself and in the people around you. Your life changes the moment you stop tolerating a version of yourself that quits early, that settles, that explains away its own excuses instead of correcting them. Everyone carries around a mental list of shoulds. I should work out. I should save more. I should follow up on that opportunity. And most people just accumulate those shoulds until they've built an entire identity out of self-disappointment, quietly resenting themselves without ever changing the behavior. What actually shifts a life isn't turning should into a louder should, it's turning it into must. A should is optional, negotiable, easy to postpone. A must doesn't ask how you're feeling today. It simply gets done because the alternative has become unacceptable. Raising your standard is the single most powerful lever available to you, more powerful than any goal you could set, because a goal is just a wish with a deadline attached, while a standard is the floor you refuse to fall beneath regardless of your mood, your excuses, or how convenient it would be to skip today. If you can't hold a commitment to yourself for 5 straight days, that says nothing about your circumstances and everything about your current standard. We're not talking about a 50-year transformation. We're not even talking about the months it might take to see real results. 5 days. If that feels impossible, the problem was never time or talent. It was always the standard you were willing to accept from yourself. And whatever standard you accept, that's exactly the life you'll end. Remember the receipt. Every day adds another line to it, whether you're paying attention or not. You get to decide what it says when someone finally reads it back to you. Proof of a life spent chasing excuses, or proof of a life spent chasing everything you said you wanted, on the days nobody was watching and the applause hadn't arrived yet. That's the whole lesson. Stop waiting to feel ready, raise the standard, and refuse to negotiate it down. Become the hunter instead of the gazelle, the lion instead of the animal that only moves when it's afraid. and go become the person who never had to be told twice.